It is a $15 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia, and it has sparked controversy here at home and around the world because of that country's poor human rights records. David Terrace from MRU joining us to talk more about this deal and the political ramifications of going ahead. For people, thanks for coming in, David. For people who may be not totally up to speed, what are we talking about here in terms of a deal with Saudi Arabia?
So the government of Canada, the Harper government, brokered a deal between General Dynamics Canada and the Saudi government to sell LAV-6s, light armored vehicles, $15 billion worth. And, you know, while Trudeau called them Jeeps, you know, if you've ever been up close, this is a 30-ton monster, and when they're heavily armed, they're incredibly destructive.
Yeah, it's not a transport vehicle. It is meant for being on the lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what does this say about the Trudeau government in terms of carrying through? There are other countries that have stopped with Saudi Arabia. So how does this set up our country then?
So here's the dilemma. This is why this is agonizing and really interesting. On one hand, do you sell weapons to one of the world's great violators of human rights, whose record is despicable and barbaric, and one group called them the worst of the worst in terms of human rights violations? And to a country that is not friendly to Canada. I mean, they have tried to manipulate the oil price to break the oil sands and have probably, you know, is it 100,000 jobs that we've lost or 150,000 jobs? They've turned, there's a war in Yemen that they're fighting that has turned Yemen into a slaughterhouse. And certainly, you know, the world is reacting. I mean, Sweden has canceled contracts. Germany will not sell to them at all. And last week, the U.S. prohibited any sales of cluster bombs. So the world is reacting to what's going on.
Yet we're not.
And yet we're not. And what makes it difficult, Scott, is General Dynamics Canada, which is in London, Ontario, is a world leader in this technology. And there's probably, I mean, I don't know how many jobs, but there's not only General Dynamics Canada, but there's a whole nexus of companies that are in the defense industry in southern Ontario. And those jobs are desperately needed in a part of Canada that's becoming an industrial desert, that's becoming an industrial wasteland. One of the other arguments is, if we don't sell it, Finland will sell it, France will sell it, Singapore will sell it. There's a lot of other places they can get this.
So we might as well take the dough while we can. So how does this play out then for the Prime Minister and even our country's reputation? What happens next?
Well, I think that's what, you know, Minister Dion said, you know, the bottom line was, if we canceled the deal, there'd be a swirl of lawsuits. But it also becomes, because the government of Canada brokered this deal, then it becomes our international reputation. You can't trust Canada when it comes to export permits and brokering deals. So he felt Canada's reputation was on the line.
And now Trudeau's reputation when it comes to human rights might be a little bit...
Yeah, I think that's the issue that, you know, we saw in the news clip Trudeau raising the flag of gay rights and, you know, all the soaring rhetoric about equality and progressive politics and a changing world. And yet for this government, when push came to shove, they sided with one of the worst human rights abusers on the planet.
Fascinating stuff. Always terrific to have your insight. Thanks so much for coming in, David.
My pleasure, Scott.
David Terrace with Communication Studies at Mount Royal University. Much more still ahead as we're sitting here at 10 degrees. A beautiful day ahead. Jordan talking about even warmer temperatures as we approach the weekend. Never too early for Jordan to talk about Saturday or Sunday. We'll have more on that when we come back.